Let's take a recap of our headline stories now. Oh, I do understand we're not taking a recap. Let's go to this conversation now. The heartbreaking death of Lufuno Mavhunga has placed the spotlight on violence and bullying in schools. And joining us now to help us understand school violence is social sciences academic and PhD candidate Nomathemba Sibisi. Certainly a heartbreaking story there. And, Nomathemba, really, as a country, we try to make sense of some of these videos that we are watching on social media. I mean, one emerged from Germiston just today. What are some of the causes that you would say, lead to bullying? I think, Nomathemba, you are on mute. I'm not sure if you're able to unmute.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. If you're able to answer that question for us, good evening.
Okay, good evening, Bongiwe. Thank you for having me, and greetings to all your viewers. What I would say when it comes to school-based violence, schools are not a vacuum from the society, but they are part and parcel of what happens in the community. So what we see now going on in schools is a reflection of what is going on in our community and what is happening in homes. Hence, we are witnessing such violence in schools. There are many different types of causes that contribute to school violence, one of them being drug and alcohol abuse, community violence, gangsterism, the use of weapons, and social issues in general. They all have an impact of what happens within schools in South Africa.
Now, you are someone, of course, that has done, extensive research in this particular field. When you look at then how this is then handled, some are saying government should be doing more. We should be seeing a lot more social workers in the schools. Others are saying then, but parents need to play a role here as well. And then others are then coming out to say that we need teachers to then be equipped. But certainly it does look like this is a challenge that requires a multi-pronged approach and not just the school to simply deal with this particular challenge.
Yes, we need to look at school violence from a holistic approach. A school cannot deal with school violence internally and alone. So we need to look at ways which we can involve different stakeholders. We might have social workers or psychologists within the schools, which might help ease the load on teachers in terms of dealing with therapeutic interventions in relation to school-based violence. We can also look at having the members of the police force also being brought on board in dealing with school violence. As we've seen, there have been a number of deaths in relation to school violence, weapon, drugs that have been found in schools. So they can also assist. And we shouldn't ignore the fact that parents also need to play an active role in dealing with school violence. A child will imitate an behavior that they see at home, and then they will imitate and modify that behavior in schools. So a home, or what happens in home, at home plays a major role in what happens in schools. So parents need to play an active role, not just sending kids or children to school, but then being active, attending school meetings, being part of SGBs, knowing what's going on. In the research that I've done, teachers have mentioned that there are parents that don't even come to school meetings. They're called in terms of in relations to their children's behavior. They don't come. Some of which do come, they end up defending their children's behavior and putting the blame on teachers, which is, when you look at it, they don't want to take responsibility for their children. So teachers shouldn't be the only people that are meant to deal with school violence. We need a holistic approach in terms of dealing with school violence in schools.
As a final question then, there have been, there's been talk that you simply cannot just, take the bully either to court or to a juvenile facility. There needs to be a deeper look at what, they've also been through, because they potentially have been victims themselves. But at the same time, there's also then a family, like now when you look at Lufuno's story, there's a family that's grieving, that is laying their daughter to rest tomorrow, that is obviously enraged, and a community that is angry. How then do you balance the two to ensure that you provide the support for the alleged bully, at the same time you provide the support for the family, but also, making sure that you even the support that you give to both?
Yes, as I've mentioned before, we need other professionals within schools, especially social workers and psychologists within schools, because now you have a child that is a bully. No one just becomes a bully overnight. There's a deeper root problem within that specific child, and most likely it comes from home. So interventions need to be deep-rooted in not only looking at the child itself, but looking at the situation or in the environment that they work for, that they live in. So psychologists and social workers can work in that regard, and they can also help in assisting the family that has lost their child, in helping them through the grieving process, and ensuring that their needs are catered for, not just looking at the bullying, the bully alone. So I think it's time for the Department of Education to actually look in ensuring that maybe in each and every school, maybe there's one school social worker or one psychologist that will help deal with social issues that children are faced with, and that look at the effects that bullying and other sorts of school violence that and their impacts on other children, and looking at the victims as well.
All right. Thank you so much for your time tonight. That was social sciences academic and lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Nomathemba CBC.